the DIY backyard garden pond. Even though it's far from perfect, it's still one of my favorite projects and something that I'm genuinely proud of, even to this day. It might not be level, there's an unrefined look to the wooden structure, and it's very over-engineered, but not in a good way. However, there's no denying just how well it performs. Here we are just over 3 years later, and the thing is still running like a champ. To my surprise, it's also currently my most popular video. Building it came with many challenges that I outlined in the original video. Even though it was constructed in 2019, the process actually began the year prior in 2018. However, that rendition caved in during the winter, resulting in failure. So I dismantled it and started over. That went on during the peak of summer where it was just under 100 degrees Fahrenheit through the entirety of the build. It wasn't easy, and I'm honestly not really sure how I pushed through, but I made it happen and outlined it in a series of videos. I reviewed those the other day for the first time since 2019. I forgot how much work went into the project, and at the time it seemed like a streamlined process, but watching it back now, I can say it was anything but. I've learned a lot since then, and I could build the same thing with far fewer steps now. Even so, I still had a good understanding of how to make a well-functioning system. My techniques to get there were just a little clumsy. I believe that's part of the reason why it's a highly contested build, much like the Terrarium Computer Desk and Riparium Eco Bob. I admit that it's not the most attractive pond around, but there is a part of me that really enjoys the aesthetic. I like how the plants and fish are framed within the basin itself, which makes them the focus as opposed to an intricate hardscape. Additionally, we need to take a second to appreciate the sound of the waterfall. I personally will take the sound of a blade waterfall, like this, over a babbling brook any day. Based on my other work, you may assume I'd prefer a naturalistic pond, but it's actually not the case. If I were to adopt and perfect features from this one, and combine them with more natural elements, that would actually be my ideal pond. That said, I'm glad I built this one as I did, because I wouldn't have known any better if I went straight to a naturalistic build. The wildlife certainly doesn't care about any of that though. Birds come and go all the time, frogs have taken up residence, toads use it to breed, and the goldfish have thrived over the years. The key word there is thrived. What began as a dozen has now exploded into a huge population of happy-go-lucky goldfish. That of course includes the likes of my original fish, which I had all the way back at my parents' house prior to YouTube, the ones I got when I built the pond, the generations of babies that have since followed, and Petey! We can't forget about little Petey. If you recall, I pulled some water hyacinth from this pond and placed it in the 350-gallon paludarium when I first built it. Shortly after, I found goldfish fry in that tank. Unfortunately, only one survived, and that was Petey. We raised him inside for about a year prior to putting him in this pond to ensure he'd have a good start. As you can see, he's no longer a little guy, and it's cool to see how he's thrived alongside the other fish. It honestly always brings a smile to my face to see him and the other goldfish living it up. It truly just reaffirms to me that I did something right with this pond. A feature that I thoroughly enjoy, which is really only possible with this style of pond, is the dinner knock. I've trained the fish to know that when I knock on the wood, it's time to eat. This is really fun because it gives me a way to interact with the fish aside from just looking at them. Don't get me wrong though, the view I get from sitting on this board is a great vantage point. After all, the top-down look is the best way to watch goldfish as they were intended to be, the common, comet, or shubunkin goldfish. Here I can also view the many incredible plants within, from water lilies to parrot's feather and cattail to name a few. The textures and combinations of foliage make for something that I think is truly beautiful. In fact, this is where a lot of my inspiration for the indoor cedar pond came from. There's just something about seeing plants from above with fish swimming throughout that I really enjoy. The foliage on the exterior, however, leaves a little to be desired. Well, in the current day at least. It looked really strong in the previous years, working with the view of the pond we've discussed thus far. However, this summer has been a little different. I haven't maintained the landscape as much as previous years because of my finger injury and for what's coming next. More on that later. Anyway, I eventually got to it, and this is a great way to outline the maintenance required for a pond like this. I've shown this in previous videos, but not quite to this extent. The process typically begins with the exterior. The plants grow quickly, and by the time maintenance is required, they're all grown in. So I go around and trim the plants to more easily access everything inside. On the inside, I usually just have to address the mint, which went absolutely wild this year. I also use a net to remove debris to the best of my ability. At this point, I need to disconnect the power so I can address the pumps. I start at the skimmer box by removing the pump and metalamat. This is maintained as you'd probably expect. I scrub down the exterior and remove the gunk from the inside so the impeller is not obstructed. Then I reassemble everything and drop the pump back into the box. The metalamat is usually pretty grimy, but a quick spray gets them nice and clean. I check on these periodically throughout the season and clean them whenever necessary. Anyway, back into the box they go. Next up is the pump in the basin. Like the previous, I disassemble everything to clean off gunk and to ensure the impeller is unobstructed. Pretty basic stuff here. Proper pump maintenance will ensure the system runs without issue. Once this one is clean, I reattach it to the flex tube and into the pond it goes. The biological filter is next in line. I remove the lid and get to work. To start, I stir up the lava rock to suspend debris in the water column. Then I drop my maintenance pump into the bottom to remove most of the debris. Once it clears up a bit, I turn on the primary pumps once again so the box fills up with pond water. This does part of the water change and better flushes the media. As this is draining, I remove the inner bucket from the pre-filter and spray it off. When I first built the pond, I used these buckets to polish the water with floss. I found it to be a little redundant though, and omitted it after the first year. Even so, I still use the bucket as a place to put the pump's tubes. Just as I'm done with this, the water's running pretty clear from the filter box. This means I can move the pump over to the basin and continue the water change. I typically like to drain around 30% of the water. As this is happening, I shut off the primary pumps once more so they don't run dry. This also gives me the opportunity to clean off the front of the spillway. Like usual, I refill with tap water, which is when my pond regiment comes into play. As you probably know by now, Fritz Aquatics sponsors the channel. I typically show their aquarium products, but they make a great line of pond supplements as well. Since I'm on tap, I need to address chlorine and chloramine. Pond ACCR will remove all of this and ensure the water is safe for my fish. I also sprinkle waterfall cleaner in the spillway. This is probably more useful for my ecosystem pond because it reduces odors and oxidizes debris, but I think it helps here as well. Since I did a big water change and cleaned the biological filter, I always like to supplement with a little bit of bacteria, in this case Monster 360. This concentrated formula of bacteria helps remove sludge and organic debris. The water column itself is also full of debris now. A quick dose of water clarifier makes a huge difference. This flocculating agent binds small particles together so they can more easily be pulled into the filter, improving water clarity. Doing this after maintenance also helps reduce the amount of sediment left over on the bottom of the pond. After I've added my supplements, I cover the biological chamber and allow the pond to continue filling. Once full, I turn on the pumps and enjoy the pond until doing maintenance the following year. That's correct, the next year. Other than cleaning the metalamat, the process you just saw is a once-a-year procedure. That means that in the pond's lifetime, I've really only done water changes, pump maintenance, and clean out 3 times. Additionally, I let the pond run 24/7, 365 days a year. Unless the power goes out or I'm doing maintenance, it runs continually. The waterfall keeps the top from freezing over in the winter, and it's deep enough that it's below the frost line. That means the fish can remain in the pond for the entirety of the year. The only detail attached to that is when it starts to cool down, I have to stop feeding them so they can properly enter into dormancy for the winter. All of this was made possible through my design and the pumps which were provided by awhile. Having used them non-stop for 3 years, I can say that they're definitely reliable and good pumps for an application like this. I've really had no issues with them whatsoever. If you were to go and design something similar to this, I can definitely recommend them. And to be clear, I wasn't paid to say any of that or to use the pumps. They just wanted to help with the build and sent them for me to use. A valid concern that I see a lot is in regard to predators. Even though my yard is fenced in, raccoons and other animals can easily gain access to the pond. That said, as far as I know, I've never had an issue with anything like that. I believe that's primarily due to all the hiding places I engineered in the design. I knew that if I didn't include these elements, it could be a real possibility. However, I will admit that on one occasion, I noticed a hawk sitting on the edge, observing the fish. They're highly intelligent, so if given enough time to figure it out, I'm sure it would have snatched up a few. Knowing this, I covered the top with a net for a few weeks until it stopped frequenting the area. Otherwise, I never saw anything of concern, and as far as I can tell, no fish ever went missing. Also, many thought it would be a mosquito factory. The irony is that it's actually probably a mosquito deterrent. Since the water isn't stagnant and it's properly skimmed, it's unsuitable for them to breed in. Plus, the healthy water and shallow riparian areas make for the perfect incubator for dragonflies, which just so happen to predate on mosquitoes. So if anything, this is making a dent in my local skeeter population. From 2019 to now, this pond has been nothing but a joy to have. I know that it's not the best looking thing around, nor the most effective use of materials, but the thing I can say is this: it's been very easy to maintain, the fish are thriving, and I've enjoyed the sounds and views for countless hours. Plus, it's attracted other wildlife and given them refuge. When I consider the value of a pond, I'd argue that this pretty much checks all the boxes. Wouldn't you agree? After 3 successful years, I can also say that this is definitely a cheap and effective way to build a pond if you're in a pinch. It really does need refined, but as you can see, even in its prototype stage, it still does precisely what it's intended to. However, this is where we lead into what's next and the sad truth about this project. This pond can no longer be here for reasons I'll discuss in an upcoming video, and it must be dismantled. No, it's not being replaced with a bigger and better pond. I'm taking it apart, filling it in, and bringing the fish indoors. Originally, I wanted to outline all of that in this video as well, but I'd prefer to do it in a separate one. There's a lot involved, and I think it could serve as a great learning experience for anyone in a similar situation. I had to reminisce about the entire project, since this will be no more very soon. And even though I've dismantled countless ones before, this is especially sad for me. You have to understand how much I wanted a pond before I built this, and how many years it was in the making. It literally was a dream come true. I built it all myself, all by hand, and thus my connection to it is far greater than the 5 million plus people who followed the build. It also is directly related to a lot of friendships I've built since. Greg reached out to me after the build to do another, which led to me befriending him, Ed, the folks at Aquascape, and Tussie Landscaping. Shortly after, because of this, I went to Pondemonium where I befriended Blake and Kenan. Then because of the work I've done with Kenan, I linked up with Charlie, which led to me getting Cookie, who on a side note, I absolutely love and is one of the coolest animals I've ever had the pleasure to steward. And the crazy thing is, I know this web will only continue to be woven as the years progress. In a way, I'd say that next to the closed terrarium from How to Terrarium episode 2, this is probably my second most important project. I certainly don't consider it to be my best work, not by a long shot. Regardless, I love it all the same, and it will always have a special place with me. I hope that you all enjoyed my rendition of a true DIY pond. I'll likely revisit it at some point to refine the process, but for now, the journey must come to an end. Thank you all so much for your continued support. I can't wait to show you what's next and what I have in store for this channel. This will not be the last time you see these fish, but it is the last you'll see of this pond. That's all for now though. Until next time, Serpa Squad, take care and peace.